Ruben Amorim has 4 wins in 14 Premier League games. We saw teenagers on the bench. That bench had an average age of 19. Of course, there are injuries galore at Manchester United. Where are we with Ruben Amorim's Manchester United? Are the performances mostly down to the injuries that the team is facing, or is this manager not quite cutting it? Chuck, on Saturday we did the double header going from Orlando to FNB Stadium to see the two Soweto rivals. But on Friday, we were supposed to go see Papa Doc in his debut as Captain America. But that didn't happen. Did you have a Valentine's Day date or something that I don't know about?
No. Simple answer is no. My love is football currently, so that's my answer. And I went to there twice, 2 stadiums in one day, so that's more than chocolates and flowers.
There you go. Welcome to yet another episode of Two Up Front. That is Chuck. I am Jay. And we get into where we were on the weekend. That is the football. And Chuck, beginning with Kaizer Chiefs, the second of the double header that we got to see in person, coming through with a 3-0 win. This is after a 4-0 win in the first round of the Nedbank Cup, and they're through to the quarterfinals. And there were some scintillating moments there. And the question is, after the 3-0 win over Chippa, is Nabi finally cooking?
I don't know. And I say that because I know we're going to get into the Paris game as well. Both Baroka and Chippa are not good enough. They deserve to get beaten by 3 goals or more on the day. And so because of that, I'm not too sure if Nabi is really cooking. Look at his signings, right? Tawakale played very well the entire game. Lepo looked very dangerous in the first half, and the second half went a bit missing. So those kind of things for me make me think, yeah, they were good. They had very good control. But I think the introduction of Andile Jali for Chippa allowed them to play a bit more. Obviously, they couldn't do much in terms of stopping Sundowns because 2 of the goals happened because of the keeper's mistakes, and so they couldn't do much in terms of trying to mount a comeback. But in terms of how they look, Jay, and how they're putting a pass together, I think what is gotten right is the midfield. I think Tawakal is a very good calming presence in terms of whether you want to put Umar next to him, whether you want to put Usamkelo Zwane next to him, whether you want to put George Matlo, whoever you want to put next to him, I think he is the ideal partner. It's him and someone else. At the back, I think, he's always gone with Udotlino, Nomiguel, and I think they were solid on the day as well. I was happy with Happy Mashian on the day, to be honest with you. He put in a shift. He was good. He was tidy on his side. And on the other side, Froster, he was the one who had to do, I think, more work. I don't know, but I think Ufilenda gave them a run for their money at the back. Was, I think, the only bright light for Chippa on the day, unfortunately, but he played very well. But back to Chiefs, which is the focus of the question, Jay, I think baby steps. I think they're going to get it right because I think when you look at the fact that Umdu came on second half, it was a bit more lively, but obviously the game was done by that time, right? Ufilagazi came in to see it out as well. So I think in terms of the balance, they are looking better. They don't... Before, they couldn't build up from the back. They couldn't press. They weren't working together as a team. So there's cohesion. But Cook, I don't know, Jay, about Cook because, like I said, Chippa was poor. So I don't know if I could use the word which Nabi is finally cooking.
The pots are on the stove. The ingredients are inside the pots. It is starting to smell like an aroma which has you like foaming at the mouth. Maybe just a tinge. Is still missing some spices and some other stuff. But the progress is there. The progress is there, Chuck. Watching that game against Chippa, as you say, like Chippa did not really offer much in terms of resistance. I did think as well when Uchali came on in the second half, as well they were pressing Chiefs in those central areas, not allowing them to play as easily as they were beforehand. And as a result, what you saw from the Kaizer Chiefs performance, we've not yet gotten a 90-minute performance where from start to finish they are the dominant side or on top, and even that being the case, when you play against a fellow PSL side, you don't truly anticipate that you'll be on top of the entire 90 minutes. But there's still some way to go where you have the sense that they were completely untroubled, right? Or they were dominant on the day. But there were moments where they did look like that, particularly at the start. And the player personnel is starting to come together. You mentioned Ukele, and he looks like he has already written his name as one of the first names on the team sheet. You know, when Kaizer Chiefs are putting out their best team, Cele is going to be one of those midfielders. And in terms of the profile of midfielder that Kaizer Chiefs have been crying out for, you know, into like someone who's going to come in there and be a controller. And I quite liked his pairing with Usamkelo Zwane. The knock on Samkelo Zwane up to this point, also from us, is the fact that he's not kept things simple. You know, he's always looking to do more than he's supposed to do, and as a result, his performances are a bit like erratic. But I feel the signing of Ucele is something that has put pressure on him in a very good way. One from the standpoint that, well, someone has come in to take your job. And if you are going to be in that midfield, if you're going to play, you need to be at that level. You need to be good enough. And I also think that he's learning from him in training in terms of how do you play the position in a way that is effective, but doesn't have to have you looking for the $1 million pass each time. And I saw the work rate from Uzwane. I saw him push up a little further forward in terms of in possession and out of possession as well. And they weren't being played through with Ucele, which was a concern of mine with the two of them playing in midfield and missing an ox in there. What are they going to look like? So that looked good, right? That looked good, and they had the ball and they had control and they were neat in possession, and they were able to make Kaizer Chiefs play. And then ahead of them, Serino's a different talent. His talent alone elevates Kaizer Chiefs. I feel like Lilepo coming into this team is something similar in terms of that quality of Serino. He elevates this team as well. And then you had Umori, who he's been in the team in recent weeks, right? And he's not set the world alight, but I think he's played well. You've not looked at him and thought, man, you are bringing the team average down. And I personally think they can still improve in that position, and I think they can improve with one of those two guys I mentioned, whether it's Serino or Ulilepo, because I think in the strongest Kaizer Chiefs 11 right now, you have to have him to starting. He came off the bench, and when the quality and the control had waned from Kaizer Chiefs, Du coming on was the spark. He gets them to play. Like when he's on the field, the opposition finds it really hard to track him. So I think a midfield three that is Ozwani, Noqele, and then you've got Du at the top of that as the number 10, and then you've got Serino and Ulilepo as wingers, but not traditional wingers where they're bombing down the wingers. They can do that if needs be, but forming part of that midfield, forming part of those passing triangles, and as I'm saying, bringing the quality that they bring, and also the goals, because we saw the goal from Serena, again, quality. Yeah, so I think, Chuck, it's coming together. And as I'm saying, Nabi's got his chef hat on, and I see why he turned down the offer to come coach his national team of Tunisia, because he believes in the project, and he just needs time. He just needs time that Kaizer Chiefs and is starting to come together.
I think one thing you mentioned on match day, which you hadn't said as yet, is the fluidity of the front four, because it looked like a 4-2-4 at some point in terms of Lepo's playing down the right, and then at some point he's just behind the striker, and then he's on the left as well. Serena was all over the place as well. I think I have to mention Morris, and I see that in good and bad light in terms of I think Chiefs need a recognized goal scorer, someone you can give the ball all the time to. Obviously, there's going to be a Mabasa that we're going to talk about later on, right? But they play different style of football. But in terms of them being as fluid, you want someone who's going to be consistent centrally to give the ball to. Morris was that, but further low in terms of the formation, because he was there to create, he was there for the 1-2s, but never really on the end of passes, which I think is great because it opens up space for players like Modi. Unfortunately, he's not lethal either, because hence the 2 goals came from goalkeeping mistakes, right? But those chances were created, which is the story of Kaizer Chiefs, that we'll create chances and we don't put them away. But this time there was Nwabali to help them score those goals. But I think first goal by Serino, that was great passing, great build-up, and the finishing was amazing, right? Top bins. Yeah. When you think about then the fluidity of those 4 players, I think that is great in terms of you don't know who to mark and when, you know? And I think Lepo was finding joy on the right. When he came to the left, it was a bit more, Modi was finding it harder on the right once they had switched, because I think Lepo was winning the duels via his pace on the right. Whereas when it comes to the left, it was more of a passing game where Serino was more in the game with him. So I think in terms of that fluidity, that will keep teams guessing, right? And I think, Jay, as you outlined the formation of the midfield, I think it's horses for courses. Against Chippa, definitely line up that way. But I think when you play a strong opposition, then maybe Ox has to fit in somewhere. And I don't know who would they sacrifice to make that formation work, because
It's going to be Zwane.
you think so?
Yeah, it's going to be Zwane.
Yeah.
So in the absence of where when you're playing rather Ox, and I agree with you, against teams of a greater quality, you are gonna play with Ox. What you get with Ox, you get the defensive stability in terms of screening that defense, right?
Yeah.
But of course, the passing game is lacking. And I think when you play against teams where you feel as if you can play on the front foot, you then play Zwane, where you'll have the control, because Chiefs, with the signings that they've made and the players who have been promoted as well from TDC, those youngsters, they have a good quality side. As I mentioned previously, I don't think there's many teams you can count. I don't think you can count 4 teams and say they have a better squad than Kaizer Chiefs in the league. So which means when they play against the other teams who are not in the top 3 or top 4, whatever the case may be, then they can play on the front foot, and they can play with a midfield of Zwane and Celo who continue to drive them forward.
And I think lessons when you speak about Zwane and Ox, they both need to keep their football simple, as you said, because the Ox now also, as you keep highlighting, likes to try those passes where you're like, it's not really quite in your locker, is it? And if they play next to Tabo guys, there's a guy next to you who's got the quality, and you don't have to play Hollywood passes. So I think Ox, keep it simple. Zwane needs to choose one of two things: either be very disciplined in your shape or your positioning, or be as industrious, almost akin to what Mdu is in terms of always be available for the pass, but keep it simple in that regard. But I think what's definitely gotten what they've definitely gotten right since the derby is Chiefs fight now. They don't fight for themselves, but they fight for the team. You get to understand what to. I mean, as much as Chippa were bad, they weren't allowed any space because Chiefs were pressing the entire game. They couldn't, even if they tried. I mean, their best avenues were ball over the top. Even then, they weren't winning many of those duels, or rather creating much from that as well. So I think,
which is another sign of Nabi's time at the stove, Chuck. The fact that they're not conceding, and that defense is continuing to grow. And he and we saw in the derby where they were more subdued, and you didn't have those big spaces you saw early on in the season that were being exploited. And in the game against Chippa as well, Frosler was more attacking. You did see Mashan as well venture further forward, maybe not all the way to the byline, but they weren't truly troubled at the back. And as I'm saying, signs of growth.
The question is, though, Che, as much as you did pose it initially, are they really cooking? Because we've said this, and then at some point, load shedding, and then they're no longer cooking, and then they're eating raw food, and then the light comes back on, and then the pots are on the stove again, and they're cooking again. Do you think it's no longer a false peak? They actually are going higher?
No, the improvement is there. I'm seeing the trajectory going in the right direction. As I said, the players that have been signed Morris. We're still to find out, and I mean, we don't really expecting much from Morris, so I'd put him as well into the category. Like, they made good signings. They made players who they signed players for the first 11. Not guys to come back up, guys who were questioning in terms of their quality. These guys have come in. The quality is there. The international experience of Utlele, same thing as Ulilepo. And you see them within the first 2 games, within the first 3 games. And you have a sense that they have lifted the quality of the team. And as I'm saying, and then on the purely coaching side, where you didn't get reinforcements at the back, they are playing better, and that's down to the coach. They aren't as easy to play through as we've seen, and it's not to say Chiefs are not going to lose going forward, and it's also not to say they're not going to lose badly, because this is only the start of the project. This is still a long way to go before we truly speak about them as being at the level of a Sundowns, a Pirates, and the Stellies. So there's some ways, but they've already traveled a distance, and he's at the stove.
Look, they were good for their 3 goals, but obviously there was a big helping hand from Nwabali. 2 goalkeeping errors. One was a shot that he should have gathered. He spills that, and then he tries to make a tackle, causes a foul, and that's a penalty. The other one is a shot that was parried back into play. That's goal number 3. So, Jay, do you think Nwabali had his head in the game? Do you think something else is bothering him?
There was something else bothering him. So after the match, we saw Coach Nabi go up to Nwabali, and he had quite the conversation with him out on the field, right? And the speculation from most people was that he was coaching him up, or he was tapping him up in terms of coming to Kaizer Chiefs, because these are conversations that have been going. The rumors we've heard that Kaizer Chiefs will be looking for a goalkeeper, and the one who is at the top of their shopping list is Nwabali, and it left a bad taste in some people's mouths in terms of why is he having that conversation so publicly with him. And then when you actually follow the story, and this was from reporting from Far Post in terms of revealing what that conversation out on the field was about between Coach Nabi as well as the Chippa United goalkeeper Nwabali.
Yeah.
It was surrounding the passing of Nwabali's parents because Coach Nabi also lost his dad not too long ago. So he was offering his condolences to Nwabali. And in terms of the performance we saw from Nwabali and the question you asked, was his head completely in the game? It doesn't seem to be. And Coach Thabo September, he came out and spoke about the fact that Nwabali actually asked him not to play. In his words, the coach, that Nwabali pleaded not to play because he's not in the right frame of mind to play. And Thabo then offered, as Coach Thabo offered as well, that he, considering that Nwabali is the number one goalkeeper and is one of their better players, we saw he was part of an integral part of Nigeria going to the final of the AFCON. The coach pretty much said that he forced him to play, Chuck. And he later then offered that he is a young coach and he's learning the ropes. But it was disappointing to hear that. When the player says that he's not in the right frame of mind to play, and the reasons for it are because as I mentioned, he's lost both of his parents within the space of 2 months. I believe that's what you get, and it's disappointing that the recognition or the realization comes after you see the performance on the field when the player did tell you, because it was not a matter of, well, you gave that performance and you are scratching your head wondering what is happening, and then when you go to question him later or you speak to his teammates or whatever the case may be, then you find out that this is what has happened, and you ask the player, why didn't you come to me? And these are the things we speak about when we're talking about mental health in terms of players. And we know in sport, which is like hyper masculine, and these are the conversations we've tried to introduce into the game where players are comfortable, not even speaking to us, but within the confines of the home that is the club, where you can go to the coach and say, Angiko Sharp, this is what is happening, and I'm not asking to take the entirety of the season off, but even in other workplaces, you do get compassionate leave when we're talking about his parents, both of his parents, in a short space of time. You would have hoped there would be greater understanding and more grace that is offered to him, where they can say something is happening in your life that is bigger than football right now, and you can take that time off, because he has been a great servant for this club. He's the captain of the club, and he's dare I say, earned that. And if not that, like, what are the policies within the club? Because we've seen situations where we hear from commentary once a game starts that a player is missing because of a family bereavement, know. So for that not to have been offered to Nwabali, it's disappointing. And it gives greater context as to why we saw the performance that we saw from Nigeria and the Chippa number one keeper. But to not completely throw Coach Thabo September under the bus and to not completely trample him, he's the one who offered this information and then said that it's something to learn from, because what I got from him speaking about that was, while he was watching the performance from Nwabali play out, it came to him that I did not act in good faith towards the player, and I did not take the right decision in this moment, and it's a moment to learn.
Yeah, a moment to learn. Yeah, but it was not handled properly, Jay, because it's not a confidence. It's not a confidence issue in terms of the only way to get back onto the horse is to keep riding again. Play, and as soon as you get a good performance, it'll be good. Because even if Chippa wins, doesn't put Nwabali in a good headspace, because that's not why he's in the doldrums or why he's not particularly himself. So if he says I'm not good and the reasons are not football related, then you allow him that space, Jay, because you could see by the concession of the goals, it was not skills related, which is Nwabali's not good enough. His focus
was not there.
Yeah, he got to the balls. He was there at the right place at the right time. But if you look at the second goal, for instance, it's a matter of focus. Make sure it goes into the bread basket. Make sure you gather the ball. But because his mind perhaps was elsewhere, and after the conceding of the actual penalty, how long he stayed on the ground, you actually would have thought he was injured. Maybe would have been on another bad moment in my life, another, you know what I mean? And so maybe because now you're offering that information, I look at that particular moment differently because he was down for a while. I thought to myself, what's up? But get up and try to save the penalty, you know? So maybe that was playing on his mind for a little while. But I think, yeah, I mean, great for Thabo September to then say, okay, I got that one wrong. You know, great for him to own up to that. But yeah, that's the issue with mental health. If I've already spoken up and I've said I can't and here are my reasons, surely that should hold some weight. It's one thing if I'm holding it in and you can tell by my performances that not everything is fine. But if I've said it, allow me that space. So
it's taking us backwards.
Yeah. I mean, so he tried. He played on the day as well as he could. But ultimately, I mean, play someone else because judging by the display of the 10 outfield players, it didn't matter who was in goal because they weren't that much of a threat. Chiefs were going to win anyway. So I guess he learns.
Yeah, Chuck, it's that putting a potential win, and we know the further you advance in the cup, the more prize money you get, and it just doesn't feel right. Like we know that guys are there to play, they're paid to play, they're there to work. This is their occupation. They've got contracts. They've got a responsibility to show up on the field for the team. But we talk about football as a family or a brotherhood, and like we are together in everything that we go through. And then someone has this level of tragedy before them, and there's no one within the leadership structures who is able to say, wait a minute, guys, I don't think this is the decision we need to take. Yes, we recognize that this is an important player for us and there is a great opportunity in front of us, but at what cost? You know, because and the question is, at what cost to the team, Chuck? Because how do you trust? You hope that they were able to speak about this and are able to move forward in a healthy manner. But there's the possibility that it could sever the trust between the player and the coach and the leadership, and then the rest of the players in that dressing room, because you look and you see how the organization treats situations like that, and you start making decisions in your head as well in terms of, well, if this happens to me, I'm not coming forward with this, or maybe this is not the place I want to be at because I see how they treat us, you know. And as I'm saying, it's maybe that's making a mound into a mountain, but the possibilities are there because as we're talking about, this was an opportunity to listen and to hear, and then to it's not even rocket science in terms of what was the right way to react here. You know, and also we're not talking about the fact that, Chippa don't have any other goalkeepers. There's a goalkeeping crisis over there, and he absolutely had to play. Yes, you can make that argument because it's a cup game and it's a knockout game. But in terms of the greater picture, they did a disservice to the player and to the players within that dressing room. But as I'm saying, the hope is considering the words of the coach afterwards, that okay, there's been reflection that has happened and there is a commitment to doing better going forward, and hopefully it's exactly what we see going forward.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that, Jay, that sometimes when tragedy strikes or when things happen that remind you that there are bigger things in football, these are some of those key indicators that, wait, let's hold up a bit, there's something else, he's more than a goalkeeper, you know what I mean? There's something else going on in his life, and you think about that.
Let's think about the human behind the player.
Yeah. I also think to myself, sometimes, because I remember that, I keep referring to this note that Rolania wrote to Umda when he was injured. Sometimes coaches are just in the zone. They don't quite see, this guy is injured. He can't go on. You want him and you see his qualities and you look at the state of the game and you think, we can win with this guy. He can't do it. Thabo September saw Nwabali and is like, this is my guy for the game. He can't do it. That's the other thing. He can't, because where is he playing? FNB is going to be a cauldron with the pressure turned all the way up. Who are they playing? Kaizer Chiefs as well. So is it the situation that you want to put him into? I don't know. So, but I think, as you said, he's owned up to it. And I think hopefully there's learning from there on. But earlier in the day, we didn't just do FNB. We went to Orlando Stadium as well, Jay. And we got to see Pirates win 3-1 against Baroka. And look, I don't have to convince you, because you said here on the podcast already that this is your favorite team to watch, at least. How did that game play out for you, Jay?
It's such a crazy thing because I don't think Orlando Pirates had all that much control throughout the match, right? I think there were moments. I don't say where Baroka were dangerous, but there were moments where they held on to the ball and they were on the front foot. Particularly Kabelo Khodiseng, I believe that's how you say his surname, the number 12. That young man he had a game. He had a good game, and it was a great advertisement for him. And those fullbacks as well, who looked more comfortable going forward than they did defensively. But the difference in quality showed up in the moments. Football is a game of moments. You don't get very many to score goals, a low-scoring game. And where Orlando Pirates absolutely won that game was within the quality of their structures. Those players are so attuned to the tactical acumen of the coach that you see the quality of goals they score, and it's just mind blowing because we saw a goal like this. I just forgot the opponent now, where I think it was in the Champions League game, right, where Rele passed it into the back of the net, where it's a build up and all the way to the box, and the goalkeeper is eliminated as an empty net, and you just need to finish. And of course, the rave is around the last goal, where it's 36 passes that leads to the hat-trick goal for Mabasa. But even the two goals before that, what they were doing on the sides and the wings there, the combination play, whether on the right, whether on the left, whether it's Hoto on that side or it's Mufuke on this side, and it's Tito as well. Feels like Tito is always involved in these moves. And then you've got the striker, you've got the finisher, you've got the clinical man in the box who then is able to finish those moves. And in those moments when they play like that, yes, I know because he scored a hat-trick, it's easy to be a prisoner of the moment and say that's the perfect striker for the system. But he does look like the perfect striker for the system because when he comes out the box, he does not look as good, right? He does not look like one of these things is not like the others in terms of his teammates. But where the teammates excel is in those triangles, is in that pass and move, the give and go and get into space to receive again. And then when they make it that tight and that highly technical, they find themselves then in the box, and then you need to give it to the person who's going to finish. And the person who's going to finish, who's best suited for that, is Mabasa, and he came away with the hat-trick. But Chuck, all of those goals, what a treat, man. What a treat to be in the stadium and to see them play like that, because those Baroka players were chasing shadows. I felt sorry for them, and I was thinking to myself, I don't know if there's anyone out there who can stop those moves, because they are so attuned. Those Pirates players, when they move like that, like it feels as if they're moving to the beat of the drum that is playing in the stands. And as I'm saying, Chuck, it does not feel like there's anything you can do as the opposition. You just have to put your hands up and say, like, it's too good, because it was too good.
I mean, those were probably the best 3 goals you'd see in a stadium, like in one place. And I think the drop of the shoulder by Hoto, who had a mixed bag in terms of his game, right? Poor passes, but then he's showing his pace, his stamina. Then there's the trickery to get the assist to Mabasa. I think with the second goal, Jay, because I remember you then saying when Mabasa scored his third goal, people are thinking about, hey, Tito had a cutback, and this one Tito had a back heel. That when Mabasa scoring a hat trick, the stadium is going, hey Tito, like how here's the hat trick hero, guys. What's going on? It's just that he's such a magnet for the Pirates fans. Hence, even in that 36 moves, there's space for him to shine Samayanyana, and you're like, Tito, how does that turn into a goal in the end? And that's what Tito is. It's all those fun and games, and then there's the quality as well, all in one package. But I think, Jay, overall, I mean, I think the team was great. I mean, if I were to have a blemish, it's that Cheney should have said that free kick number 1. 2, okay, still has to get up to speed. He's not quite there. But for everyone else, man, what an outing. I mean, Makaula had just the first half to play, was great, was industrious, same with Makaula. But I got a better appreciation for Dino van Rooyen, because yes, I was mad in terms of his defensive work and not seeing who's behind him all the time. But as an outlet, as an option out there on the right, he's always available. He gives them so many options. He overlaps, he inverts, he comes in to give so much work. And then down the other flank, there's Paseka Marco as well, who carries very well. So I think the team was well balanced. And I was happy to see Jewutin Ndlondlo came into play. They got Ukumvudi as well. They made they had 5 changes all in all with Machopa as well coming in, and we still got an extra goal, which is what I was crying out for in terms of guys. We need to rotate some guys. Some guys are tired. Some guys need to have a break. So I think overall, Jay, in terms of the squad quality and what each person gave in the game, that was amazing. Because if you think about it, yeah, Baroka's not in the PSL, and you're supposed to beat them like they're not in the PSL, right? Yes, Sundowns won 2-0, but yeah, it was easy going. It's supposed to look like that, and you're not supposed to be. I get the magic of the FA Cup, the magic of the Nedbank Cup that minnows can surprise. That's a surprise. It shouldn't be what's supposed to be happening. And if you're good, if you're on song, these are the performances that we expect. So, Jay, all in all, man, I'm happy to see Mawasa back on the score sheet again. Another hat trick will only boost his confidence again. It makes it harder for Machopa, obviously, but Machopa will find his place, will find his game, because we know there's certain games that are just built for Machopa. Really wasn't instrumental. And that's fine. That we still won 3, and I think those things are important in the game. That our talisman or our main guy, I guess in this game, was back to Tito. But even if they're not on song, but the team plays well, I think those are things that you like. Because Sundowns, they've got a talisman in Ribeiro, but they are more the collective than they are the individual. Not to say anything, not to shout out the season that he's had thus far, because his numbers are great. But Sundowns are a collective, and that's what you want sometimes. In terms of, if you ask me where's Tito, I'm like, but Tito, I don't know what Tito is, but here's Pirates. Where's Ribeiro? Where's Matthews? Here's Sundowns. And that's the level that you have to get to in terms of the guy is not there, but the team is good. And so I know it was against Baroka, but on the day, everyone performed very well. Couldn't be happier.
Yeah, Chuck, that's the definition of chemistry that we saw on the weekend. Because, and you mentioned Dino, right? When he attacks, he's got the skills in possession of a midfielder. He's so sure in possession that when he holds the ball, it gives an alert to the teammates in terms of what they need to do. Because if he overlaps, you had Hotto playing as a right wing in that game. When he overlaps, Hotto comes central. If he underlaps, Hotto knows to go out wide. And at the same time, you then see Utito there, and then they form the triangle, and they pass it amongst themselves, and like it's movement inside and outside, and you don't know which man to pick up. And it's the same thing when you go to the other side. You've got Urele there, and then they use the striker who's more leaning towards that side. And then again, it's Tito. And I do want to highlight to Tito, Chuck. And as a man who's born and bred in Tembisa, I love that guy. Like, yeah. I've decided, like, all of the criticism that Tito gets, like, I'm not defending him against that criticism. Fine, you can have the criticism. I am very happy to take Tito as everything that he is, because when you look at that final goal, those 36 passes, go back and watch that goal and just watch Tito throughout the entire sequence. Just watch Tito from when he gives the back heel pass where he's more to he's in an advanced position in that right half space. At some point he is in the DM position. Then you see him running forward in order to receive the pass. When he doesn't get it, he comes back deeper again. At some point where at the start of that move, when the ball went to Uhorto when he was in the box, Tito is going towards Uhorto to receive, and it goes all the way back, and then Tito is going back again. Chuck, he like the cup dynasty that you see with the London Pirates. It doesn't happen without Tito. Like. It really just doesn't happen, and this team doesn't play as the way that they do. He is the maestro in the middle. He is the conductor, and when he's on song, like as you saw on Saturday, there are not many players who are better than him. Number one, and who are more entertaining to watch. And you see why the crowd loves him. Like, South African football fans are knowledgeable, man. They know exactly what they're watching. Yes, they love the fact that and he'll do it. Because even when he does that, again, watch Tito and watch what he does. When Tito receives the ball deep and he is like doing something on the ball, he's standing on the ball, or and there's no one in front of him, watch his head and watch his eyes. He's doing that with the ball at his feet, but his head is lifted up and his eyes are scanning the field. And what invariably tends to happen after that is not then him going on his knees or whatever the case may be and achieve. There is a ping that goes to a teammate, and 9 out of 10 times it gets to the man, because what he does, he freezes the defense when he does those things, because guys are deadly afraid of going at a guy who's doing that with the ball, right? So they are also watching what he's doing. It's like, well, there he goes again. But there's method to the madness. There's genius to Oshugela, and just watch Tito and appreciate him. I don't know how long he's going to be at Pirates. I don't know how long he's going to be at this level. But while he is, Pirates are winning, and he's an integral part of that. And it's so entertaining. It's so entertaining. He's honestly one of the wizards, one of the magicians, and it's a pleasure to watch. When I say like Pirates are my favorite team to watch, he's a big part of that. And on the weekend, man, that was a treat. Like him and the rest of that Pirates team were a treat to watch.
Yeah, and I think for me, what complements all of his qualities is the hard work. Because if you think about goal number 2, is he's making that late run into the box, and then there's the pullback for Mabasa. Goal number 3, if you look at the final 2 passes, it's him beating the defenders to get the lob from Morele over the defense. If he was a striker, he's through on goal. But because he's got he's scanned and he knows what's around him. He knows that Mabasa is right chest, so if I flick back to him, he's got more space. So I think the fact that he's everywhere, as you say,
it's so important.
You detailed the
Tito is so important.
Yeah, because you said he was in the center of the park. At some point, he's out on the left. At some point, he's deep in the DM position, and then he's next to Hotspur. And next, he's playing the final pass to Mabasa. In 36 passes, Tito's obviously he's had most touches. He's integral in moving the ball and moving the defense in all those areas. So I think that hard work complements the talent. Because he's there all the time, he can shine. So I think, yeah, I agree with you that there are styles out there, but the guy who's the conductor, the guy who Otungai is Tito.
Ambulance as Timbis. Chuck, a team I do not enjoy watching, which I don't think you enjoy watching either. Manchester United again fell to a loss, this time against Ange Postecoglou's Tottenham Hotspurs. Ruben Amorim has 4 wins in 14 Premier League games. We saw teenagers on the bench. That bench had an average age of 19. Of course, there are injuries galore at Manchester United. Where are we with Ruben Amorim's Manchester United? Are the performances mostly down to the injuries that the team is facing, or is this manager not quite cutting it? Are we still waiting to judge him? What is happening at Manchester United following that loss at Spurs, Chuck?
Before I even answer that question, Jay, if you see the number of managers that have walked into the door and left as well, I think to myself as a fan, should I just accept that maybe this is what Everton have become and Newcastle? At some point they were good, and then they're just not. It's just so selikama, because that performance, I could see early on within like the middle of the first half that I don't know how we're gonna get a goal back. Like the worst thing to have happened to Man United was Maddison scoring early, because I think to myself with the strikers that you have, okay, Xerxes is more of like a 10. He's not gonna really be our goal outlet, although he had a couple of shots great for him. But Hoyland is not going to get goals because no one plays the ball to Hoyland. Hoyland always has to press to win the ball, or if he's getting the ball, it's somewhere in the middle of the park, and people are like, wait, what's his first touch like? Like, no, give him the ball in the box. Similar to what we say about Mabasa, right? That might not be the greatest outside the box, but give him the ball where he is most lethal, and then he should give you something. We never play those balls to Hoyland, right? I think to myself, okay, say the guys were fit. We've seen Kobe Menu, we've seen Eriksson, we've seen Lisandro Martinez, I almost said Lautaro. We've seen just about anyone you want to name.
You wish you had Lautaro Martinez.
It will still be the same, unfortunately, this team.
Most likely.
Because we've seen all of them play within the time that Ruben Amorim has come in, and the system is just not working, Jay. And I said because before Ruben Amorim, there was Ruud van Nistelrooy. And in that 2-game span that he had, we were winning. And I'm not saying that we will look like we were world beaters or going to contend for the league, but there was some sort of football where you're like, oh, I could watch this, number one. Number two, oh, we're creating chances regularly. Number three, we're competitive, because against Spurs, we were dominated. They had so much of the ball, and when we got it, we couldn't do anything meaningful with it. So I think, Jay, the system is just not going to work. We need more players in the midfield. Yes, it's great to have Dogu Bomb down the left and Dalot down the right, but we need midfield presence, because if it's, look, Casemiro and Bruno is just not going to cut it. Casemiro, Bruno, and someone else. That for me means we're competitive. So I think swallow your pride, swallow your ego, adjust, tweak the system. What other stats are required to tell you it's not working? 4 wins since you came. It's a miracle we're in the Europa League knockout phases. I don't get it, So for me, Jay, as much as you want to back the manager, he at some point needs to understand. Even as good as Spurs were on the day, I looked at Spurs and I'm like, if they were playing someone else, they'd probably get beaten as well, because they are open and they don't play particularly well. So because they were playing against Man United, they looked as good as they did. So I think these managers need to wake up, Jay, both Ange and Amorim. So my verdict is that Maybe I need to accept that we're going to be like a proper mid-table team, and I need to be comfortable with that, and we're going to win the odd
Not
cup here
even
and there.
mid-table. That's the thing. Do you know how shocked I am? I genuinely am shocked by Manchester United's position. I know Chelsea have finished 10th before. I know Arsenal have finished in 8th place before. And I know Spurs find themselves down there, but I don't consider Spurs one of the actual big teams and actual giants. And Manchester City, I'm not going to mention their time before they had money where they were being relegated. But 15th, like 3 places above relegation zone. At this point of the season, I am absolutely gobsmacked. Chuck, we're talking about Manchester United. Manchester United have won the most Premier League titles ever. Most like top division titles in English history. But if we just like looking at the Premier League era, it's 13 titles, and I think the next like Manchester City are on 7 or 8, and they are in 15th. Do you realize, Chuck? I did this mental exercise when I was thinking about Manchester United, who Manchester United are, and the position they find themselves. They're record champions of this league, right? Mm-hmm. And they previously are treble winners as well. Mm-hmm. In the top 5 leagues of Europe, the only other side who qualifies as that is Bayern Munich. I cannot fathom Bayern Munich being that far down. And the thing is, in Spain, the record champions are Real Madrid, but they've never won a treble. Mm-hmm. Similar when you look when you go to Italy, Juventus have never won a treble, and they're record champions over there. Inter have won a treble. So the combination of the two is only Bayern Munich and Manchester United. The other giants we're even talking about, they've never they don't hold those two distinctions. And Manchester United are down in 15th place, and it's not like Everton today where okay, in the 80s once upon a time, yes, they were good, but even when they were good, they were still the second team in Liverpool, and they were not a global power. Manchester United are still financially viable. So we hear now the stories in terms of, yes, there are money issues and the tickets have been raised, and we know the stadium needs refurbishment and all that stuff. But when you just look purely at the revenue they bring in, they're still in the top 3. And when you take that and you take their history, how do we have this team being so poor and consistently? And it does not matter if you change managers. It does not matter if you buy players. It does not matter that you make changes at the very top. It just continues to go down. It's the most shocking. It's so abnormal, Chuck. Like I tweeted that it is exceptionally abnormal to see Manchester United in this position, and where we find ourselves now under this coach. So to go to a point that you made in terms of the system and the personnel, that 2 midfield, you need N'Golo Kanté to make that work at his absolute prime times 2. It is too demanding, Chuck, especially when you've got Casemiro and Bruno. There's so many occasions where Bruno finds himself isolated, and now especially with like an Amad Diallo who's out for the rest of the season. At least he helps with pressing and in terms of tracking back. Then he adds some numbers, but with those two, they're always overrun in midfield, and it feels like, man, just go to the 3. Just go to 3 in midfield, because that's all the other teams keep exploiting the numbers in midfield. And the thing is, Chuck, I feel as though this is not just Ruben Amorim being stubborn and believing and wanting to die on the hill that is his system. I feel that he cannot coach anything else. I feel as if that man knows that his calling card, his bread and butter, the only thing he knows how to do and that he's hoping to be successful with here at Manchester United, as he was wildly successful with where he comes from in Sporting, is that system. This is why when he was interviewed by Liverpool decided to go in a different direction, because my assumption is that when Liverpool were concerned about the flexibility of the system, this is the way he's going to play. And he came in saying that this is how he's going to play, this is how he's going to win, this is how he knows to win. And I think what that also means is not just, well, I've been successful with it, so trust it, is also that I don't know anything else. I don't know how to go to a back 4. I don't know how to go to a 4-3-3, like a version of a 4-3-3, and be successful with it. I am just hoping that we limp to the end of the season and I can convince the person who holds the checkbook that I need you to sign all of these players who are going to fit into this the 3-4-3 system. And then he hopes that it's going to take, because even after he signs those players and it looks like this, which I'm terribly struggling now to see it turning around to a point where, oh man, he just needed an off season, or he just needed to sign his players. But Chuck, it's not looking good. And kudos to that, to Ruben Amorim, because every time he speaks, he's very candid, right? But when I listen to him, if I was a Manchester United fan, like, my confidence would be continuing to go the way the form has gone this season, just further down and further down and further down.
3 spots from relegation, confidence, 3 spots from quitting. But I think, Jay, you might have a point, but I think to myself, you've got assistance. Even if you can't coach it, put the team back to how you found it when Ruud van Nistelrooy was in charge. Let them play, let them figure it out. They know how to have played. I mean, Ten Hag stumbled on a system and they played. And then when he's like, okay, here's what I want to do, he got fired because that system was not working. Let them play. Slot all the defenders, put 4 at the back, put 3 midfielders in place. Let them play. Because I think, Jay, when you look at someone like Anthony, when he comes to a team that can play, all of a sudden he's good again. We saw the same thing with Sancho when he was at Dortmund. When you come to a team that can play, oh, you've got the talent. I don't know what's happening with him at Chelsea at this point, but Marcus Rashford has got a bit of confidence at Aston Villa. So not only is it the only thing you can do, the players can't do it. So there's a big clash. This is the only thing you can do. The players can't do the only thing that you can do. So somewhere in the middle is a rock and a hard place, and disaster and relegation and all these things, Jay. And I think he has to bend the knee at some point. You have to bend the knee and say, guys, okay, I tried. How do you want to play? That's bad. That's where you are, Jay. Because
that is bad.
You can't be at that high horse where you're like, I believe in my system. Meanwhile, you're 15th. This is like 3 months later and you've done a million interviews. I believe in my system, but the results say, Uti, your system, try as you may. It's like you rolled it to the stone away. You're like, there's still a body in there. You're like, no, I believe he's going to wake up. And it's like a month. You roll the stone away, the body's still there. He has to.
It's decaying now.
You're like,
well, it's going to be a miracle when it happens. And it's going to take a miracle to revive Manchester United.
As a wise man said, there was a lot of men that came and went, right? But we'll see if it's for real. So for me, Jay, as much as he believes he has to make tweaks, you absolutely have to make tweaks. This is, with all due respect, this is a step up. As good as Sporting are, as high-flying as they were in the Champions League, great. But this is a step up in terms of the demands day in and day out of the Premier League. It's more physical. Like we said, the two in midfield are being exposed every week. Whether you can say Casemiro's old, let's put in Kobe Mainoo. He gets exposed as well. Okay, let's play Collier. Exposed as well. There's no cover for any of those players. Bruno Fernandes is playing deeper, so he can't influence play that often. And when he does, he has to play long balls because there's no one else in front of him to play with. So I think at some point you just have to consider and say, okay, guys, let's meet each other halfway. How do we make this work? Because we're akin to disaster. And like I said, maybe as a fan, I should just say, Villa were great at some point.
Maybe it's time for you to bend the knee as well, Chuck. Let me find out this man was a fraud. And like as football fans, where banter is concerned, we throw the term around, right? It's like, it's a fraud. But if truly Ruben Amorim cannot coach any other way, or he's not confident that he can coach any other way, that would define him as a fraud, right? Because when you are absolutely counting on this thing working, like, it has to work. Because it's worked before, yes. But it has to work, because if it doesn't work, I don't know what I'm going to do. And you are the coach at Manchester United. One, that would make him a fraud. And it will also, again, I suppose, something that we all know, put into question the people who make the decision in terms of when you had a conversation and it was very clear that these players and this system do not go together. What was the short-term plan? Because, yes, you brought him in for the long term, and eventually you're going to clear out and you're going to get the players that are maybe suitable for this. But even then, at this point, even if Ruben Amorim was not taking Manchester United to like Champions League levels or whatever the case may be, if you at least saw the start of something that down the line is going to be successful, then you are confident as the execs that you can go and buy his players for him. This is a disaster because it has not gone well. Yes, we've had the injuries, but in terms of the coaching side, it does not look like it's gone well at all. So now you're gonna say, go spend hundreds of millions of pounds in order for it to go well. Whereas we've already spent so much money for the previous coaches, and we are now stuck with these players, and they are not working. They need to go. With the financial situation that United find themselves in right now, to go make that kind of commitment, and this is more terrible than it actually even appears, because as I'm saying, you're going to get to the end of the season and the conversations are, well, these are the players I want. My rebuttal as an owner at Manchester United, I'd say, what if it doesn't work out? Because it's not looked as if there is even a hint of it working with these players. Because we're not talking about like you're using players from like the fourth tier. You're still using Manchester United players. As I'm saying, yes, it may not look like a championship side, but the system must at least look like, okay, it's viable. It just needs some tweaks. Whereas at the moment, it looks like, I don't know if this thing is going to work here completely. And I don't know if I want to throw like tens and hundreds of millions of pounds behind finding out.
Jay, the other thing that I'm concerned about, because he had a bench full of youngsters, I asked myself, at under 19, under 17, are they playing the system? Or they have to then figure it out when they get to Ruben Amorim. Yes, some of them train regularly at some point with the first team and they get to understand what's going on, especially because of the injuries. But I asked myself, as far as the director of football is concerned, is this what that at 18 look like, the under 17s? Is this how they play? I don't know if this is what they look like. So even then, if you look to the bench at the youngsters, can they bail you out because they don't play the system? So interesting
it's
times.
Bad times.
Interesting
it is horrifying times at Manchester United. We'll be watching this one with a keen eye to see where does it go. But so far it seems as if whenever a decision is made to turn things around, it's just gone even worse. At this point,
we'll be back, Jay.
Ollie looks like Sir Alex Ferguson.
Ollie? No.
At this, and relative to what is happening right now, Chuck. Oh man.
See what I mean? If we're saying that these are the names we're putting up in comparison, then we're probably mid-table at this point. I need to accept. But
not
should
mid-table. You are
eventually?
low table.
I'm saying to accept that
You're
we're
in
gonna be
15th place, Chuck. I need to change your language.
We're the new wolves. We're the new wolves. But someone who's trying desperately to prove that their team are not frauds or at least chokers, because every big tournament comes around. We know what to expect with the Proteas, but all the time we place our hearts and our trust and we say this time they can do it. Proteas, I see Champions Trophy is on the verge of starting. I think this Wednesday it gets underway. Temba Bavuma, first games against Afghanistan. He says he believes they've got the tools to go all the way. Jay, after the warm-up games in the tri-series and what we've seen before against India, against Pakistan, in terms of white ball cricket, what's your faith in this side and what do you think they can do?
Temba Bavuma, I love you more than I love any athletes in this country at the moment. But I don't know if I'm buying what you're selling. And he has to say that though. You know, like you can't say I don't think we have a chance. But when I so I take his words at face value with a healthy heaping of salt. Because 6 games lost in a row. And what Temba argues for is that in the last 2 games, which though in those warm-up games in the tri-series against New Zealand and Pakistan, which both we lost, it's not the team that you're going to see at the Champions Trophy. You've now had guys fly in, and there's a game happening at the time of recording. It's happening right now, and that starting 11 or so, the starting 11 is a warm-up game. It is made up mostly of the team that you're going to see at the tournament. I think the only player missing is Heinrich Klaassen, but Rabada is back in there. You've got Markram in there. You've got Stubbs in there. You've got Dezozi playing in that match. You've got Van der Dusen playing in that match, and then you've got the tall all-rounder as well, Marco Jansen. He's also in that match. So the argument that Temba is making is that we do not have our guns, and so you cannot judge us on that. But I saw what happened when we played Pakistan at home as well. I saw what happened though we won that series against Ireland at a struggle, 2-1. And I saw what happened when we played against Afghanistan when they won the series against us. And Afghanistan are in our group. And as I keep saying when I come on here, Afghanistan are going to throw spin at us and everything is a mystery when we are playing against Spain. Now we're playing on the subcontinent. Now we expect the pitches to be flat. We saw again in those matches in the tri-series. But you still think that is something that is going to come into play. We're coming up against an Afghanistan who they don't have Mujib. I don't know why they didn't select him. They say that he's got an injury, but that's interesting because he's actually replacing his teammate in the IPL who actually has an injury. But they still have Noor Ahmad and they still have Rashid Khan, especially. And that's gonna be a trial by fire. Against Australia don't have the top three strike bowlers. Cummins is out, Stark is out, as well as Josh Hazlewood. So that presents an opportunity. I'm not here saying that South Africa have zero chance, right? But when I think of the fact that we've lost 6 games in a row, and I think it's 8 of the last 11, I'm not filled with a great big confidence. I look at the team on paper though, and especially coming off the SA20, and I know it's a different format. There's some confidence. The thing I want to see, I want to see Rickleton and Bavuma and Van der Dussen form the top 3. I think particularly, and yes, what happened in the T20 and also what happened in the SA20 and what else happened in the test matches, particularly with Ryan Rickleton, I do want to see him at the top of the order. And I want to see him there with Bavuma, and I want to see Van der Dussen coming in after that because of the relationship he has with Rickleton at franchise level. And I think the man to miss out is Tony Dzozi. I don't think he's set the scene alight in terms of opening, particularly in the shorter format. And in recent times, just based on form, and my mind always goes back to that 2015 World Cup when we had a player on form and we decided to go back to Philander, who was coming from injury, who was the career-wise was the better bowler, But based on what we'd seen, we were supposed to continue with a hot hand. And I think that's what you do going to a tournament. Like, you only have this confined amount of time, and you look around and you decide very quickly what is best right here, right now. Not historically, not what we're looking to do down the line, but here in the moment, and then you go with that. And I think, and that's what I would go with. I'm confident in our batting. It's in our bowling where I'm really questioning, because yes, you've got Rabada, and you've got I'm forgetting the all-rounder again.
Keshav, Janssen.
You've got Janssen as well, and then you've got Keshav. Yes, those 3. Very confident, but where the other 20 overs are gonna come from, with Mulder and another all-rounder, maybe that has me nervous. But yeah, Chuck, I'm not going into this one with any expectations. Surprise me. That's what my message to the Proteas is. Surprise me. I'll be supporting. I'll be there. I'll be rooting, and I'm hoping. But yeah, the form coming into this one does not fill me with the same kind of confidence that I had going to the 2023 World Cup, when we had put big scores on the board against Australia, and then also in the World Cup itself. And it was disappointing to see what happened in the semi-final. But in this one, yeah, my expectations are very, very low.
I wish we're chasing this warm-up game just so I can see in the last 3 games, at least, different faces of the Proteas, how we look like setting a target, what do we look like when the pressure's on getting to the target. And I think, Jay, historically, I'd like to say, I don't know if I've got the facts to say this, but in my mind, if we play in a country on batting tracks that are low scoring, that favors us a lot. But if teams are going to be scoring 300 plus almost every game regularly, then the pressure's on, because then we don't do very well in terms of chasing number 1. And as you said, those 20 overs, those can fly. Those can go for what, 60, 80 and stuff like that. And you don't want that if you're trying to block the other end. So I think, Jay,
160, Chuck. They can go for 160.
That's
if you conceding like around that from the 20 overs, that's already that's a score of 400.
So we don't need that to begin with, number 1, right? Which puts immense pressure. And I think the guys can handle it on the Kagisos and Janssens in terms of get the wickets first up. But I think, Jay, we've got competent guys, just that sometimes as a team, because either we play well all together, or it's domino effect and there's a batting collapse, or there's like we saw in the game against Pakistan, we just can't get the wickets. How the guys got hundreds, and you're like, guys, come on, you can do better. Slow them down, yeah. Or, okay, get wickets. Like do something. Slow them down or get wickets. They did neither, And obviously, tempted to say those aren't the guys who are going to the Champions Trophy. Granted, but the other guys in the management of the players and the field placing, the strategies, could they not have worked maybe to get 1 wicket in that final partnership? I don't know. But I think, Jay, as I said, you throw your hearts in there, you throw your hopes in there, and you see what happens, because you're a Proteas fan in the end of the day. You are a South African at the end of the day, and you just hope, because, yeah, as much as Australia don't have the bowlers, they've got the batting firepower still. You worry about that. these games are just made for England at this point in time because they swing bat all the time, right? And obviously, even outside of our group, we know that India are heavy favorites. So it's a big gauntlet to get through to get our hands on the trophy. And I think in prior World Cups, you were like, India are the ones to beat. Didn't really look that hard other teams, but now I think it's changed a bit in terms of the guys who are ahead of us. So yeah, you want to be optimistic nonetheless, even though I know you can tell from my voice that not too much confidence is permeating through. But I think, Jay, if we get runs up front, I think, as you said, Rickleton as well. I think I agree with you in terms of Dzozi. I looked at Brisker making runs this weekend, and I was like, if I could make a change in the squad, that's who I'd swap for Dzozi, Matthew Brisker. So I think, Jay, if we get 200 runs from the first 4 batsmen, then we're good. And I think that should be consistent. If not, then obviously the Stubbs and the Janssens need to put in a shift. And I don't think you have to rely on them too much. But also, I think we just need to be flawless in the field. The South African trademark, flawless in the field, don't concede too many things. And also, Janssen, please be disciplined when you're bowling. Mulder, try some variations. We need as much as we can get in terms of our bag of tricks. But yeah, let's see what happens with that one.
I think Klaasen is going to have a big tournament. And I'm looking to him to have a big tournament. The last knock I saw him playing for the Pretoria Capitals, where he didn't have the greatest of SA, the Durban Super Giants. My apologies. You have the greatest of SA20 tournaments, but that final knock and then the knock against Pakistan as well.
That was good.
In that 350 plus score, he looked ominous. And if he's in that touch for the entirety of this tournament, if you have him coming in with around 15 to 20, or maybe not to 20, but 15 overs to go, where he can set somewhat of a platform and then go in the last 5 to 10 overs, then I think we're in for mammoth scores from the Proteas themselves. And with Janssen coming in there with his long levers in those last 5 overs, because when the pressure is not on, and Janssen's batting has continued to improve again. So in the SA20, and he spoke about the fact that the conditioning program that he was on, it's actually bled into his game. So he's looking more and more like a genuine all-rounder as he continues in his career. So if you have him and Klaasen and Miller in those final overs, and if we've had a good platform from the top 4, as you say, I can see us getting big scores, Chuck. The question is, can we defend them? Kagiso, I trust. I at some point, man, we have to put it all together. Maybe maybe going to the tournament without those expectations is good, but we've been to tournaments as favorites, and what has happened has happened. We've been there as not favorites, and what has happened, the same thing has happened. So, but there's not much pressure on this team, I believe, at least. But I think if they get to a semi-final, all those goals come back. They get to a final, those goals come back. But at some point, you have to slay that beast. I do think, as I'm saying, not going to the tournament with all that much pressure on our shoulders will maybe stand us in good stead. If we don't win, I'm just going to be watching for us, having great big scores. I hope this tournament is entertaining and we see big runs, because that's what the shorter formats are about. And hopefully we are here weeks from now and we've actually won the tournament. Chuck, to close it off, we go to the world of tennis, where a certain world number 1, Jannick Sinner, has been given a 3-month ban. They revisited the decision that was taken earlier on, where they found that he had no culpability in a banned substance being in his system. But then WADA did protest, and they lodged a complaint. And what has then happened is that in consultation with the player, he has accepted a 3-month ban, because they do now find that he was somewhat culpable. To that you say what?
Because everything is seemingly... I read a comment by Andy Roddick in terms of the 3-month ban. It's going to end, I think, the 4th of May, if I'm not mistaken. And it was that's like suspending a kid for 3 days, and you do that on a Friday. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Anyway, then he comes back Monday. Nothing's changed. Nothing's fallen off. And I think players like Nick Kyrgios have said, no fine, no games missed, no titles lost. What is this? What are we doing, right? And you get someone like Stan Van Wawrinka say he doesn't believe in a clean sport anymore. All of this because there's inconsistency in how these things are executed. It seems like some people are better off, or maybe their legal team, in terms of representing that particular athlete. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that seemingly it's not the same stick that's flogging all the horses. Sometimes they get a big stick, sometimes it's a feather, and you're like, what's going on here, Shout out to Sinner for having defended his Australian Open crown and having played as good as he did. But if you are dirty, there should be actual punishment where we can see. Basically, it's a slap on the wrist, and things like that, slaps on the wrist. You do it again because I'm not saying I'll do it again, but I'm just saying if the punishment is not going to make you consider your life choices. What are we doing? Especially at that level of the game, Jay, especially with that much money at stake, with the sponsorships, with the names, with the legacies that people are building. You can't then just say, well done for the Australian Open, and okay, we've appealed, but here's the immediate 3-month ban. Why not hit him where it hurts, where he wants to get a Wimbledon, where he wants to get a Roland Garros? Why not make a statement so that people know that we're not playing here? Because I think it's happened with other players, and the treatment has been very different. People will protest. So I was out for 3 years, and then retrospectively it was reduced, but I lost that much. I've lost a big chunk of my career. It hasn't happened this way. So Jay, I can't control. If some punishment has come out, you must be at least happy about that. If there's some guilty finding or there's some suspicion in terms of it's not necessarily oblivious or not necessarily culpable for the findings, you're happy about that. But inconsistencies will always be an issue.
So the other side of what you are talking about with regards to what the players said, like Stan and Nick, is Aryna Sabalenka, who said that she's now scared because she can't leave a glass that she was drinking from and go to the bathroom and drink from that glass again, because who knows what will turn up in his system. And that is such an interesting thing for me, that there's the divide in terms of how players are viewing this. Some players, which you were highlighting, view this as an inconsistency and that the rules are not being applied correctly with regards to the views on doping. Whereas Sabalenka's view is that there's a witch hunt for us players, because now I'm scared that they're going to come after me, or they come after players. And so it's caused a divide and a rift in the respective change rooms, right? But in terms of in terms of Sinner's punishment, the statement reads that he has accepted 3 months. So what was coming after this guy? And they said we're not convinced, or we're not happy with the fact that he had no parts to play in what ended up in his system. And then upon landing on the decision that no, even if it came from his team, which is what the statement speaks about, that he has oversight over his team, so he is to blame on some level. But then they say that he has accepted 3 months. So you prepared a ban, or where you were supposed to prepare a ban, because this is how we know doping cases work, that if you find the player guilty, you hand down a judgment and you give them, and they were going for a 2-year ban. You went and you spoke to Sinner and you asked them what is he comfortable with, or you negotiated. You negotiate bans now? We negotiate drug bans. Since when has that happened? And this is the same thing that happened with Iga Swiatek, with her getting only a month. And the thing is, if Sinner was playing under protest when he won the US Open and he won the Australian Open, he was essentially playing under protest. Why are we not revisiting the results when he was being investigated? That there's nothing retrospectively, and the punishment is you spoke to Sinner and you said, listen, here are the options. What do you want to go with? And presumably he came back and said, well, I've won the Australian Open. The next big tournament, the next Grand Slam is happening on these dates in May. So can my suspension last until I have to play a Grand Slam tournament? And then Wada said, what? Yes. I don't understand the concept, Chuck, of they made him an offer and he accepted. Are you not supposed to be the ones who make the rules and hand out the bans? So when you say that a guy has been found guilty or a girl has been found guilty, in one case it's a month, in another it's 3 months, and it's both the players who in recent times have been world number 1 and Grand Slam winners, it does not look good. You like I then hear what Stan Wawrinka is saying, because it feels dirty, because this is a precedent, right? If they come out and ban another tennis player one of these days for 2 years, there's going to be uproar, because the as Freitag called her herself And Jannick Sinner, maybe it's because we're celebrities that there is this level of furor around us. But a lesser player who does not quite carry that name, when they get a 2-year ban, it's going to look terrible. It's a bad look.
Medvedev was suggesting that maybe it's the legal team that got him the 3 months versus the 2 years that was initially put forward. And he said that he hopes that in future things play out this way, meaning that if someone else is guilty, you can't do then 6 months, you can't do a year, 2 years, because it's like, well, we saw what happened to those guys. Isn't that because I mean, the past is the past. Fine, there are inconsistencies based on the past, but going forward, there must be some consistency, because if you've changed your step, you're no longer striding with that confidence of 2-year ban, and you're now tiptoeing. And someone else has an indiscretion or breaks the rules as well, you have to tiptoe. You can't stomp on them anymore, because now you've said, well, this is how we treat these situations. So going forward, that's what needs to happen now, because if it doesn't, what do you do then?
Why would I not take a chance on a 6-month ban? Let me take double the dose of what Jannick Sinner took, and going into Roland Garros and Wimbledon, and knowing that I'm gonna get busted, and there's a precedence, and this is how the law works. There's precedence. So by that logic, that if this level of ban substance is in my system, and the story is that it's my team or whatever the case may be, you literally can recreate that scenario and make the argument in front of the arbitrators that, well, it's exactly like Sinner. Like, I'll take my 3 months. Like, I'll take the substance. I'll go win the tournament I really want to win, make the money I really want to make, and then I'm gonna take the test, and I know what it's gonna come back and say, because we've measured to the T what is gonna be in my system, but it helped me do what I needed to do, and I'll take my 3 months. Like, if you get busted at the US Open, Chuck, that happens in August and September. 3 months is the rest of the year. You're back for the Australian at the start of the year.
That's called taking a break. That's what it is.
I built in a break into my season, and now I'm back in January. As I'm saying, like, they were not supposed to do this, especially in the way, like, with the participants, with how they came to the conclusions. This is not how things were supposed to happen, and this is where we find ourselves, in a sport in disrepute. Thank you for joining us once again on this latest episode of To A Front. If you've not yet done so, please subscribe to the channel. Please comment. We love hearing from you. We love responding to you. Like the videos, share the content far and wide. You can continue conversations with us on our social media pages across all social media platforms. It is at To Up Front Pod. I'm at Jannick Chuck is at Chuck. To Up for myself, Jay. I'm outie.
In the month of love, we do away with all logical thinking and reasoning. We do it with the heart. So if I ask you, are the Proteas going to win the ICC Champions Trophy? The answer is yes.